I think that organizations know and understand how important it is to invest in their employees. I have never spoken to anyone, especially at a mid to upper level management position, where they've said, I really think our secret to success is never developing our employees. I think that with millennials in particular, there's a fear of doing that. So there's this fear that, if I provide my employees with all this incredible training, all these avenues for success, they're going to up and leave because that's just what millennials do. I'm going to invest years and years, or 12 to 24 months, if we're being a little more pessimistic about it, in developing my employees, and then they're just going to hop jobs. From an organizational standpoint, I think it's fear. I think that's why you see a lot of these entry-level jobs asking for 2 to 5 years of experience, not because the job itself requires that much, but because an organization is scared to bring in someone and train them to do it, because they're scared they're going to train someone to do it and they're going to immediately hop away. Millennials do leave. They do leave organizations. I think part of the problem is that a lot of organizations stop there. They don't ask why. It's not, well, hey, I have these very values-driven, flexible, hardworking employees, but they keep leaving. So therefore this generation's just going to leave. And it follows then that I should just invest the absolute bare minimum in them since they're going to leave anyway. And I think that's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you look at millennials that do report that their organizations are a great place to work, they are 59 times more likely to endorse that organization to friends and family. If they trust their organization, they're 22 times more likely to stay at that organization for the long term. If you have companies that are showing sincere interests in their millennial employees as people, you're seeing 7 times as much innovation as organizations that don't take the time to build those personal relationships. I don't think intrinsically millennials are always looking to job hop, that they're just a naturally disloyal group. I mean, when you talk about someone switching to a new job, there's such a high cost to that. It's not a pleasurable experience in many ways. But I think that millennials are very critical about the return on investment for staying in a position. They're not baby boomers where the stereotype there is you can have a high school degree and get a job to make enough money to buy a house, have 2 cars, have 3 kids, and a wife that stays at home. Those jobs don't exist for this generation. So they're going to be a little bit more critical about what they're getting out of the job. When we look at why millennials leave, a little over 40% because of pay, 35% say lack of advancement, 30% say lack of development. These are all traditional employee needs. These are not secret, strange things that only millennials want, so much as millennials don't feel like they're receiving it from their organizations. Pensions don't exist. Benefits are complicated. Given the recession in particular, advancement has stalled for a lot of people. A lot of people that were planning on retiring did not. And that's had ripple effects all the way down. And you have a generation that is ready to buy houses. They're ready to have kids. They're ready to make that next step in their careers. And if they feel that their organization isn't offering that, then they're going to start looking other places. I mean, given how easy it is now to apply for jobs and see what other people are making, there are a million resources for that. HR and organizations in general have to assume that their employees are educated on their market value, which may be another reason why you see people leave, is because that type of information is readily available to just about anybody now, where it wasn't 2 generations ago. So if we're talking about what to do, assume that your millennials are educated on what they're worth, and that even if they're not, they're going to have a very strong perception of that. Tap into that and know what that is. So know what your employees think they're worth. And if you can't figure that out, it's your responsibility to know what the market thinks they're worth to keep them. Build relationships and collect feedback from your millennials. That's something that just the sincere and purposeful relationship building is huge. And that ultimately results in trust, which is something that a lot of millennials don't have in the workplace. And this doesn't, when we talk about building relationships and building trust, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to open up to your millennial employees about your personal life if that's not something you're comfortable with. But trust at its core is predictability and transparency. So you do have to be transparent with your millennials. You have to tell them why things are happening, not just what is happening. And they need to know what your values are and how you operate, so that way they can trust you. So creating trust, knowing your millennials, know what their market value is and treating them as such, and then create mechanisms for shared buy-in with them. You know, millennials want to feel like they have ownership over what they're doing. They don't want to just be a cog in a machine. So create shared goals with them, give them those opportunities for input and feedback, and then provide input and feedback to them as well. And starting with, those are 3 very big asks, I know. And so I think starting there is an excellent strategy for at least beginning the conversation about how you're going to hold on to your millennials. Because if you can't satisfy those things, you know, that trust and assuming they're knowledgeable and then creating that shared ownership, it's not going to matter if you have an engagement program.